Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Daily Dose. You know, it's our favorite day of the week because it's Guest Thursday. And we have a good friend of mine, new to Mass. I seem to know all the people.
You do?
Yeah, well, you know, I have a lucky job, so I get to know the good people.
I'm the nerd scientist. I don't know anyone.
There you go. But you take me to Europe, so it all balances out. So anyway, this is my friend and our guest, Representative Shannon Roers Jones, joining us today. Hello, Shannon.
Good morning.
So we asked you before we went live if you've had a chance to take a breath. You're just coming off of a pretty epic legislative session, and your answer was what?
Two. I've even had two breaths. I mean, it's been amazing.
Yeah.
We come right out of the session into all of the end of the school year fun and kind of digging out at work, trying to get caught up on things that sometimes get put on the back burner for the 4 months that we're out there.
Yep.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff I'm able to accomplish work-wise while I'm out there, thanks to all of the technological advances of the last few years. But there's always a few things that get put on the sidelines, and you have to come back to those things. But so it's always a whirlwind, but it's fun, and it keeps me out of trouble. No time to get in trouble.
That's true. You have no time to do anything naughty because you're just trying to do all the good work that you do. So Shannon, I just have to say I am I'm the vice chair of the North Dakota Association of Nonprofit Organizations, and I don't know that you knew this or not, but yesterday you were awarded an outstanding champion of the nonprofit sector as a representative. So thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you. I actually, I did know. I had got an email, and funny, I have my certificate that I picked up in the mail. So it was nice. I didn't know it was going to happen, but it was nice that they chose to award, I think, maybe a half a dozen or so legislators.
I think there were 8. And it was
okay
great because it was very bipartisan. And I mean, it was just a chance to really say, these are the people who did not forget about our sector in the midst of sort of unprecedented legislative session. So thanks for that work and congratulations.
Thank you. I know it was probably very much related to a bill that I had for nonprofits this last session that would allow electronic payments for raffle tickets, which who knew it could be such a controversial subject, electronic payments for raffle tickets, but it was a little bit of a heavy lift especially in the House, but also in the Senate. And so, got that resolved successfully, but it was surprisingly difficult.
Well, I will just say from my perspective, I'm always shocked at the things that become issues that you think, well, that'll just slide right through. And so the legislative body is always a surprise. Let's just leave it at that.
It's an enigma.
Yes, yes, it is. So Shannon, we did not have you on to talk politics today, although we're doing very, very well with it. So I'm proud of myself. Mostly of the 3 of us, I'm proudest of me. Anyway, let's talk about why you are joining us. And so we'll start with the basic question we always start with, which is just sort of where did you start to end up where you are, which is to elect to not drink alcohol. So you can go back as far as you would like.
Okay. It was I'm thinking to myself now, sometimes I have to count the days. I think I'm at 6.5, almost 7 years sober. It'll be July. I know that. But I'm second guessing the year now. But so it's been a good bit of time for me being sober. And if you had asked me back when I was drinking if I would be enjoying life as a sober person, I would not have been able to understand that concept. Like, you mean I can have fun and interact with people without alcohol? And that was kind of growing up. My family, the people that I hung out with, alcohol was a part of our daily lives, right? Everybody, when you get together, it's not like we were necessarily morning drinkers, but you get to lunchtime and you're going to have a beer with lunch. You're going to have summertime, you sit out by the lake, you can have some beers in the afternoon. You're going to have wine with your meals. You're going to have, wine or beer, maybe other drinks into the dinner. It was just very much a part of the social interactions growing up. And I will tell you that most of the people that I was around and grew up with wouldn't be what I would consider problem drinkers, but just very social drinkers. And it was just a part of everything that we did. And so that's how I grew up. I didn't start drinking particularly early. It was kind of late high school. So, for people in this area, that seems to be somewhat normal. Then through some, events in the course of my life, I had kind of a real tough year when between like my senior year in high school, well, a year or two, we'll say, between my senior year in high school and my freshman year, sophomore year of college, where, it got a little heavier, a little more out of hand. And then I met my husband, and it became more moderated as we were dating through undergraduate school, graduate school, those sorts of things. But there was always some instances where I would drink way too much. And there was, many instances where it would just be kind of average drinking. But it was pretty much every day you would have something to drink, right? It was just part of every day. And over the course of time, got married, had kids, still went out from time to time with friends, those sorts of things. And when I would go out, I would invariably have more than I should to safely drive home. But as someone who feels like they're totally in control, you do it anyways. I was truly fortunate that I never got caught or arrested driving when I shouldn't have, but that doesn't mean that I shouldn't have.
Right.
And kind of through time, I never was approached by my family, by my friends, but my husband would say, I don't mind that you drink. I just don't like you when you're drunk. And there would be times when I would get in a fight or this or that. I would become apologetic. Sometimes there was a couple of different periods where I would create rules for myself. Well, I'm going to go out and I'm only going to have 2, or I'm only going to have 1, or I'm not going to have any during the week. And all of these different things where, I start to realize myself that maybe it's getting a little bit out of hand. And every time I tried to make a rule, as soon as you have one, the rules don't exist in your mind anymore. There's no ability to think through the consequences, the process, that sort of, and I don't want to try and take away responsibility from someone. Obviously, after one drink, you still are coherent, you still should be able to make good decisions, but all thoughts just shifted from, this rule I had created for myself to the fact that I wanted more alcohol. So it was, by the time I was, I'm trying to think of ages and things like that, 30s, mid 30s, I was drinking every day. It would be pretty much the first thing I did when I got home. It's like, take your shoes off, set your purse down, open the fridge, find that bottle of wine, pour the first glass, start to think about making dinner, those sorts of things. And it just became, this was the routine. I don't even know that I let the dog out before I poured that first glass of wine. It was just like, first things first. And it became so much in the forefront of my evening routine that, and then I started to realize that I didn't want to draw attention to the quantity that I was drinking. So I would find little ways of disguising how much. I would never open a bottle of wine in front of someone. And when I say someone, I mean generally my husband. But I would make sure that I always had one open in the fridge. And when people were out of the room, when people were, paying attention to other things, that's when I would open another one and kind of swap them out, make sure you get the bottle out in the recycling right away, so it's not in the house. All of these things which I thought were making it less apparent the volume that I was drinking. And you question yourself a little bit, like, is this too much? Is this a problem? But I was getting up and going to work every day. I felt like I was taking care of my kids, no problem, doing all of the things that I needed to do. I was functioning at the level which I felt like was still a very high level. And it wasn't affecting anyone from my perspective. Until it was. And I went to an event at my parents' house. It was actually, my cousin was hosting an event, but it was at my parents' house. And I'm trying to think, it started fairly early, 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock maybe. Started drinking. It was one of those painting parties. You paint and you drink, and I did. And by the time I drove home at 10, I thought I was good. I was fine. It's only, maybe a mile, no big deal. And I walked in the front door. My husband was there waiting. The kids had gone to bed. And I was trying to take my shoes off, and I fell over. And he just looked at me and he said, just tell me, what am I supposed to tell the girls when you don't come home? And he turned and he went to bed. And that was my eye-opening moment.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's when I realized that it was really much more outside of my control, or that I was putting myself at risk. I was potentially putting others at risk. I mean, not potentially, I was. And it was the beginning of a very difficult series of days, few days. So that was a Thursday. Friday, I got up. I don't believe we talked at all. I went to work. And I started trying to think about, what do I need to do to change this? I reached out to my EAP to see about some counseling help. I looked up some resources for AA and tried to figure out, what do I do? How do I do this? And I started to think through my own process, like, how do I stop this? Because I tried in the past, and I had told my family members in the past, like, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to stop drinking. And I mean, seriously, it lasted like 4 days. It was, and then I was embarrassed, right? Because I had sent this message out to my family members saying, I think this is getting a little bit out of hand. I need to step back. I need to just kind of, cleanse myself, I guess, of this excess alcohol. And then it didn't last. It didn't work because, I didn't have that same impactful experience. I mean, not that anyone wants to have to wait for something like that, but that's kind of how it had gone in the past. And so this time I was really afraid of failing. I was terrified that I was going to fail again. So I reached out to the EAP, which I was able to get in with a counselor, not right away. I think it was sometime later, the next week. But when we were planning on going out to the lake, we went out to the lake on Friday afternoon, whatever. And Ross was very angry with me at this point, and rightfully so. But we weren't really talking. And I had found a meeting Saturday morning very close to us at the lake. And I got up and I went to that meeting Saturday morning. And it was remarkably impactful. Just, just sitting there and listening to the stories of all of the other people who were there, and how dramatically they had destroyed their lives with alcohol. Losing families, losing jobs, being arrested, incarcerated, these sorts of things. But all of the things that they were talking about that led them to destroying their lives. It's like, oh, I was like, I'm right there. I just haven't yet lost my family. I haven't yet lost my job. I haven't yet gotten caught and, arrested. I haven't hit someone. I haven't killed someone. But it was so emotional, that the realization that came from that moment, like, oh, I don't have to hit that same rock bottom before I change my life. So it was very heavy. And then they gave me the book, the big book, or the blue book. And honestly, I went to several meetings that summer. And then when summer was over and we weren't going out to the lake, I kind of looked for a meeting or something that felt like a good fit in Fargo. And I did not continue to go to AA, but the beginning material in the book, kind of how the alcoholic's brain is different and doesn't function like others, like there is no just one, that realization, was really compelling to me. And just going forward from there, trying to figure out, how do I do this? Because as I'm back at the camper, reading the beginning of this book and thinking, I can't create rules for myself. I can't try and limit my drinking, because there's no limit. Once you have that one, all you're thinking about is the next one. How am I going to have more? Then I was just and listening to the radio, which was on a country station. It was like, I'm just sobbing, because every song and every commercial is about alcohol.
Yes. Isn't it incredible?
Yeah.
Everything.
Do that,
They all do it. It's shocking how much alcohol is an unconscious part of our culture.
And I'm just like, I'm not going to be able to hang out with my family, not going to be able to go out with my friends, not going to be able to listen to the radio, not going to, all of these false things that you create in your mind, like, my life is over, I'm never going to be able to have any fun anymore. But but so that was just very heavy and eye-opening and whatever. And so trying to figure out, what was I going to do going forward, and how was I going to do this going forward was, I don't know if it's the kind of thing that works for everyone, but for the first few days, week or so, I just didn't go anywhere, because I was afraid of, people would offer you drinks. And so I just didn't go anywhere. But then we had, it started out, we had Tuesday nights, we used to go out with my family, and, the kids were much younger. We would go to the pool at the country club, and they would grill outside, and we would sit and have dinner and drinks, and the kids would swim. And my family members offered me a glass of wine, and I said, no, thank you. And, of course, the joke, oh, are you pregnant? No, I'm good. But that was it. No explanation. I didn't say I'm not drinking. I didn't say just no, thank you. And then a little bit later, that same dinner, you want anything now? No, thank you. And it was just like, the anxiety was there. Like, they're going to ask questions. They're going to wonder what's going on. But I didn't try and explain myself. And then, the next week came, and same thing. You want a glass of wine? No, thank you. I think I'm just going to have water. I'm going to have soda water, whatever. And just doing that event after event. Sometimes people would make a little bit of a joke. Oh, the pregnancy joke came up a couple times because I was a bit younger than I am now. And, just laugh it off. No, just deciding to drink some water tonight or have a Coke or whatever. And the more I did it, the easier it got. And the more my anxiety level decreased, because I realized that I can just say that. And generally no one's going to care. There's not the deep suspicion that I expected there would be, all of these concerns that I had in my head. But I never told anyone that I had realized that I had a problem, that I had gone to AA meetings, that I was planning on quitting drinking forever. As far as anyone knew, I just wasn't drinking that night or maybe for a bit, because I was still very terrified of failing and embarrassing myself again, where I say I'm going to do this thing and then I don't. And so I don't know that I really talked about the fact that I am an alcoholic for probably 3 or 4 years. And then, and I'm trying to think the timing wise, then around the time that I was elected or running for office in 2016, 2017, that's when the First Lady, Catherine Helgesbergum, started talking about her struggles with alcohol and her alcoholism and her period of sobriety. And I recognized that, that it's important for people to see that there are, I don't want to say normal people, but people
Regular
like
people.
them,
Yes.
regular people
Yes.
who have struggles with alcohol, and overcome them, or make that decision to live a sober life, and still enjoy life and still go out with friends. And during the legislative session, I spent quite a bit of time in restaurants and bars with people drinking. And I think that had I not been sober when I went to the legislature, when I was elected, that would have been terrible. Yeah. That would have been terrible for me. But I feel very fortunate now that I have that opportunity to interact with people as a sober person, because first of all, I have a lot more, self-control, self-awareness. You don't say the stupid things. You don't get into your emotional highs and lows that you get into when you're drinking. So I'm very thankful that I found the strength and the catalyst to be sober when I did. Honestly, it would have been nice if I had found it a little bit earlier. But I was very fortunate that I didn't ruin my life in the time that I was drinking.
So thank you for
That's
that.
a fantastic story.
I had no idea, Shannon, that it was that dramatic. My understanding of it was that you just felt like, boy, this could be getting problematic, so I'm going to stop. So thank you for sharing that. I have 2 questions for you. Do you have anything you want to ask first?
How long was it? I've got loads of. I could just talk at you all day. I'm gonna try and stay on track here. How long was it, or do you still have the fear of the fact that you might try one drink and see what happens?
So there was a period of years where I was I was afraid early on that if I went to communion and took communion wine, that would be a trigger for me. And so I went a while and I didn't, and then I tried some and it was okay. At this point in my life, I have you know, if someone is trying something that is, you know, like a drink, a bourbon or a beer or something that sounds interesting, I'm like, can I have a sip? And I have had a sip of other people's drinks, and that's okay. I have not, you know, it's not more than a sip. I'm not having my own drink. It's not that sort of a thing. But it does make me nervous. Sometimes it's like, you know, I have to remember that this is not the kind of thing where I can just say, I'll take one, I'll order a drink and I'll have my own, and that'll be okay because I'll just have one. No, I am not going back there.
Yeah.
But I have tried a sip of something that was new or different or sounded interesting. And sometimes I'm like, oh, that's really awful. It doesn't have quite the same appeal. Not everything. I mean, still, you know, you smell certain things. And you know, I remember like when my aunt, they quit smoking. My aunt used to keep cigarettes in her purse just so she could smell them. And I'm like, that is bonkers to me because I
did that. I
No, we
never
just- we
smoked,
just
but
had
we
a-
just talked
we just
about how
talked
good
about-
cigarettes smell.
yeah.
Like someone who was smoking yesterday, and Dana said to me, "Why does it smell so bad when you smoke, but when you smell a packet of cigarettes, it's a
They
complete-"
smell great.
That never appealed to me because I grew up around smokers, you know, and I was always so repulsed by the smell of smoke on my hair and my clothes and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that part didn't make sense to me, but I smell certain things like bourbon. It's like, oh, you know, it's just like, oh, it smells so good. Make a candle out of that.
I don't mind pine trees. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have loads of questions, but I'll only ask you another one. How happy are you that you were sober before the pandemic?
You know, really, it's one of those things that being sober as long as you have been, you don't think about how out of hand that could have gotten. But when I start to, you see so many things on Facebook, right, and other social media. Facebook is the one I use the most, about, you know, women, mothers, people drinking, you know, you've had, and that's one of the things when I try and convey to people too, is like in our society, but especially here locally, North Dakota, Minnesota, upper Midwest, we tie drinking to everything. You've had a bad day, you're going to have a drink. You've had a great day, you're going to have a drink. You've had, you know, whatever. I went to a birthday party, a brunch birthday party for toddlers. And it's like 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, and there's alcohol. And I'm thinking to myself, we can't even do birthday parties for kids.
Children's birthday parties, yeah.
Yeah, but that was cool. And you kind of see that too with the pandemic stuff and the distance learning and those sorts of things. And people are stressed. There's no question about that. You know, having that responsibility for your kids' education and having all of that confined time where we're used to having the ability to get out and go places and do things with our kids. And it's stressful, but to see everyone kind of tie the stress of the experience together with adding alcohol, because that's going to help me relax, that's going to help me feel better, was stressful for me, because I mean, I did that. I was there. I made all of the excuses, like, well, you know, I had a terrible day, so I just need to sit down and have a glass of wine to unwind. And you recognize that, you know, wine is not the panacea that we try and make it out to be. It doesn't solve our problems. It just deadens our, you know, our feelings, our response to things, until it doesn't, until you get to that tipping point where it makes you like a blubbering mess. But it's just, it was difficult to watch that that kind of play out, mainly on social media, but sometimes with friends and that sort of stuff.
So, you're from a prominent local family, and so there is a different expectation. We've talked a lot on this program about. I think the biggest challenge to alcohol is class. Because if you are wealthy, if you're highly educated, if you're prominent, then it's a given that you would be enjoying high end cocktails, high end wine, that you would be going to wine tastings, that you would have a cellar, that you would only serve good bottles of wine at dinner. And I mean, it's just, it's built into a class structure.
Mhm.
And I think it's really, your story is so interesting to me because certainly there are plenty of wealthy prominent people who can drink socially and be fine, but
Mhm.
you're a remarkable example, and your willingness to be public about it, I think, is so important, because alcohol doesn't care what your paycheck looks like, it doesn't care what your last name is, it doesn't care what lake your summer lake home is on, it cares that it's in your body,
Mhm.
and it just wants to be there more and more. So I'm so appreciative of you sharing this story, Shannon, because we have talked a lot about it, but we've not been able to have someone who lives where we have talked sort of confirm it for us. So that I really appreciate that. And my question for you is, you said that leading up to the night you came home and Ross asked you that incredible question about your girls,
Mhm.
your job was fine, you hadn't gotten a DUI, you were taking care of your children, your marriage was intact. Can you look back on it now and say, "Oh my gosh, yes, I was getting up and going to work, and you weren't, your children were safe and all those things, but were you actually maintaining all of that, or had you convinced yourself that you were maintaining all of that as a way to justify the drinking?"
I would say it was kind of a combination of both. I don't think anything had really slipped or was to the point where there was any detrimental effects. But was I present? Was I engaged? Uh, Probably not. You know, just thinking about, but how engaged can you be with your children, with your family, when you have to make sure that you fill up your wine glass before you go read the bedtime story because you don't want to run out halfway through.
Mhm.
I mean, it's that it was literally like a fixture that you had to move with you through the house because you weren't going to get too far away from that glass, because Lord knows what could happen, right? If you did not have something to sip on throughout the whole evening and nighttime. And so, you know, where does that put you? And does that mean I was falling down and spilling all over the pages of the book? No. But am I engaged? Am I the same quality or caliber of parent with the glass of wine as I am without? I don't think so. But you don't recognize that as a problem when that's what you're living, and um, as you do kind of retrospectively.
Well, it's a perfect example of we have defined societally what an alcoholic is. And it's the homeless man on the street who's drinking that cheap bottle of wine in or bottle in a paper bag.
Mhm.
Or the person who's a repetitive DUI, or I mean, there we have some markers, and if you're not doing those things, then you might have a problem, but it's not a real problem. And I can tell you, as the spouse of someone for whom alcohol was similar to that, was he here in the house? Yes, he was. If I truly needed him, if somebody had broken in, if I could have woken him up, would he have been helpful? Yes. But was he present? Absolutely not. Did my child feel like he was engaged with him? Absolutely not. So it's it's just a really fascinating perspective. It doesn't make anybody a bad person. It just means something else is your primary focus, which is hard then to maintain human relationships when a glass of something matters more.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. And, just going back to your observation about, affluence um, or even just, and being a person of kind of average means, above average means in the community, I think that there's a lot more acceptance and latitude granted to people in those classes for excessive drinking than there is for people who are not of the same means. I mean, you see someone dressed up downtown, stumbling down the street, doing stupid things, throwing up, and they're, look like they come from a higher socioeconomic background. Oh, none they went out, yeah, had too much fun, whatever the case may be. You see someone who is dressed in a more of a blue collar, lower socioeconomic status background, and you just assume that it's a problem.
Yeah.
And I think encounters with law enforcement are different, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
Before I was old enough to drink, I had some encounters with law enforcement where I should have gotten in trouble and I didn't. And I, I don't think I was probably treated like other people would have been treated. And whether it's fair or not, and I don't think there was a nefarious intent to treat males or less socially connected people differently. I think the intent was positive, like they were trying to protect me, but I think it's not on par with how other people would have been treated. And
Unconscious bias is a powerful thing, and it's exactly like the conversation around alcohol. It doesn't make someone a bad person that they gave you a pass. They're not bad police officers, but we do need to figure out how to address this. Perhaps if someone had held you accountable at 17, you may not have gone down the same path. They may have helped you much more by mortifying you in the moment than in giving you a pass. Maybe.
It's certainly a thought that has crossed my mind. I don't know if at that age and that level of maturity or lack thereof, if it would have hit me the way the comment hit me years later. But it's crossed my mind. Like, if I had greater consequences early on, would I have seen the light earlier? Or would it have just led me on a more destructive path? Would it have set me up for additional failures? I don't know. You can't look back and say if I hit, it's not the choose your own adventure book where you can pick one and skip ahead to that part, but then go back and reread it and say, okay, well, what would have happened if I went the other way?
Yeah.
I like this ending better. Let's change our mind.
Yes. Well, Shannon, this has been so honest and so useful, and we just know that every one of these conversations has the potential to do something for someone. Maybe we'll know about it and maybe we won't. But thank you for sharing your story with us and for coming on and being with us.
Absolutely. That's, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead and say that again.
Meet you and listen to your story.
It was very nice to meet you too, and to listen to some of your story in the past. I haven't gone through all of the blogs and all of the videos, but some of it I have, and it's helpful, and it's powerful to listen to that and see the parallels not every story is exactly the same, but there's always parts that feel the same, feel similar. And like I said, there was a period of years where I didn't tell anyone that I was not drinking for, forever or for a reason. I just decided to not drink that particular day. But since talking to people about it, it has become very clear to me that there are a lot of people who question their particular level of drinking and whether it's a problem, whether it's not a problem. What I see now is when I was questioning whether or not my level of drinking was a problem is if you're asking yourself the question, it might be a problem. Do you want to get to the same level of, potential to ruin your life as I was, or these other people who I talked to and listened to at AA, where, my God, you listen to someone tell the story about hitting what they think was an animal and getting home and finding a portion of a person's scalp in their car. And you just think to yourself, was I ever at that point? What could that have been me? And it's eye-opening and nauseating and all of these things. And so it's like, it's a great opportunity to start the conversation for a little bit of self-reflection. And maybe you're not at the point where you have to say, I can't have just one, but maybe you need to evaluate when and where and with whom you're drinking and what are the triggers that make it so that you get out of hand. It's been really good, and I've had some great conversations with people reaching out on Facebook and getting people connected and helping a handful of people find sobriety themselves, and that has been it feels good to know that your story can help someone else.
Absolutely. So we know that we've continued that today with you. So thank you so much for your time and your story, Shannon.
And enjoy.
Yeah, I appreciate. Oh, say that again. I'm sorry.
Enjoy the summer.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah, we'll talk soon, Shannon. Thanks so much.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Everyone else, we'll see you tomorrow morning. Have a good day.